Batu, Marana, Nikto.
You must remember those words.
Gordon's alive.
You know what the Turing test is?
I know Kung Fu.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Stories Out of Time and Space. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and as always, I'm joined by Julian Darius. Julian, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm always excited after I see a masterpiece of a movie like this.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to be talking about the best of the Alien franchise, apparently. We're talking today about Alien Resurrection from 1997, same year as Event Horizon and other corking science fiction horror of the 90s decade. Yes, but 2 centuries after her death, a powerful human-alien hybrid clone of Ellen Ripley aids a crew of space pirates in stopping aliens from reaching Earth. This film stars Sigourney Weaver as Ripley, Winona Ryder as Call, Dominic Pinon as Virus, Ron Perlman as Jonna, Gary Burden, Michael Wincott, who I think we've as Elgin we've seen a few times, Kim Flowers, Dan Hader, so on and so forth, Brad Dourif, and a few others. So, yes, let's get into to Alien Resurrection. The film I think was supposed to revive the Alien franchise, and instead kind of killed it for over a decade. So,
yeah. Well, I like this movie. I certainly think this movie is better than Alien Cubed. Which I think is just a mess. You're right, it has some good shots in it. But this one is actually fun. I actually enjoy watching this movie. And I think the new take on Ripley, right, having her be some kind of weird alien hybrid, well, it doesn't, make perfect sense.
Or any sense, let's be clear.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, the setup for this doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's not doing violence to the previous one like Alien 3 did, right? And Sigourney Weaver has something to do. She's playing a very different character who's got an edge to her, who, you're not sure how much to really trust her. It's fun to watch her. And I can't say it's fun to watch Ripley in most of these movies. It's really fun watching her. And I think, the other actors are great. It's fun, watching Winona Ryder. I mean, she's amazing. It's fun watching Ron Perlman, being over the top. And, I actually dig this movie. Now, I will say, yeah, I agree. The basic premise of it, you could have fixed a lot of these problems, earlier on. But the basic premise of it is incredibly flawed. And also, I kind of feel like I don't remember it. Like, this movie doesn't stick in my memory. It's one of those movies where I sort of think, oh, that was a lot of fun. Like, I really enjoyed it. Like, that's on par with the best of the Alien movies. And then I sort of leave the theater and think, what was it that happened in that movie again?
I think that's the problem with this. I think that's the thing I haven't watched this for years. And I was like, I hate this film. I really hate this film. It's a pile of crap. And I was very much in that position of saying, like, I hate all of it. And I think the problem is the things that stick in my head with this film is the stuff I really dislike. That's the problem. I think it's the stuff that doesn't work that stands out. We will talk about the alien queen having a human reproduction and having been pregnant and giving birth to some weird monstrosity at the end. That's all I can kind of remember. and also it being like very trying to be quite edgy, and it sort of being the design in it being, I don't know, it used to irritate me. However, coming back to it this time, I know that it is quite fun in places. Um, and so and it has a definite style. Like it's a very sort of, I don't know, even like a Mobius kind of sort of style for some of the clothing and some of the design elements and stuff. It's moving away from Giga and trying to get towards something different, and that I can respect. But the premise, the actual setup. So let's be clear: the setup is they took blood found on Fury 126, whatever it was, the planet from Alien 3, and from that blood, they have taken a gene sequence and they have been cloning multiple versions of Ellen Ripley, trying to get to this thing. And each time they
Now
clone,
that visual's cool. You can't deny that visual
the
of that
growing
room is
in
cool.
the no, that's
When
cool.
yeah.
That's cool.
But yeah,
even the opening with this sort of aging Ripley in a test tube and stuff, it's the perfect version, which then the callback later on pays off. I'm happy with that. That's fine. But let's be clear, that blood does not include, just because she had an alien in it, does not include alien DNA.
Yes.
And so
yes, this is mind-bendingly stupid, right?
yeah,
or how about her memories?
Yeah, yes, genetic memories. Yes,
I mean,
so
yeah, this
and I've
is the
always
problem
hated.
with clone. I hate every clone story that does this.
Yeah, but the other problem, I'm kind of confused, and maybe we can sort of pan this out. So there's a part of the film, the start of the film, really the sort of is kickoff is we see that they are cutting her open, Ellen Ripley, or the clone version of Ripley, and they remove an alien embryo. Like instead of it bursting through her chest, they remove it, and then they're like, "Oh, the host is doing incredibly well. Stitch her up, send her back." So, but I don't know. Is that supposed to be? Was that there because they cloned her and her clone grew with an alien inside her, or did they grow her and then put a face hugger on her and she was impregnated and they took the alien embryo out? I don't know.
That would make more sense, the second
Yes.
option, but
Yeah.
they imply the first.
Yes, and that's especially in that scene where they go back and it's like, oh, there's like ones that are like half alien, half human, or all sort of it's got a
Well,
tail
and
and that
she
sort of
clearly she has alien
alien blood.
DNA in her,
Hmm.
right? Which is kind of like, well, we cloned you. The clone is so precise as to include your memories and that you had an alien inside you. Uh, but it does not include, but we're not good enough to keep the alien DNA from splicing with yours. I don't know. I mean, fly style.
Yeah,
No, this is I admit this is mind-bendingly stupid and not thought out.
yeah. So this was
And
one
it's
of
the
the things.
premise of the movie, right? I
Yes,
mean,
yeah,
you
exactly.
would think that that's the one thing you have to get right.
And this is one of the problems because, as I say, this is the one thing. As I said, I come away, I forget some of the good stuff, and I remember this, where I'm going like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, why is it? Why does Ripley remember being Ripley? Why is she sort of like thinking? Yeah, even later on when she goes into that room and there's a version of her on a gurney and it's sort of like been cut open and it's obviously it's all twisted and it's all sort of it's going kill me, but there's a big
Mm.
cut down its chest which says, okay, so there was an alien in you that they've taken out.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another comment as well which I don't understand, which kind of relates to this. They kill one of the xenomorph aliens, and then there's a comment. They say, "How many of these are left? How many are there on the ship? Because we've seen they're all caged up." And then one of the doctors says, "Well, not including that one that you've just killed, there are 12 more." And that is supposed to, if you count the tubes, apparently like that links to the versions of Ripley that have been brought. So I'm like, well, sorry, no, but we've seen that they're also bringing in humans to have
Right.
face huggers put on
Impregnated.
them. So
Yeah.
I don't know how this is working. Like it's
I
not
don't know
clear.
either.
Yeah.
I don't know either. but the images of the humans being used as test subjects with the face huggers emerging is good, is great. I mean, that's some serious, like, you're right about everything you're saying. But what I would say is that, and obviously that's a flaw with this film, right? The basic premise. But I am less bothered by the premise of a movie being kind of daft than halfway through it taking a weird, left turn that makes no sense based on what they've already established, right? It's like I am less bothered by this and just saying like they've done some experiments, they don't understand how it works, but the end result is they've got some aliens, they're experimenting on humans, they've got clones of Ripley. It doesn't really make sense, but you kind of have to go with it in the first several minutes. I can kind of do that. I what better than I can. The aliens are unstoppable, but I'm chasing after Newt. And I don't know that that's fair of me. It's just
I was
like
about to.
it's
Okay,
a
good. I'm gonna call you out on that then. Okay,
well,
that's fine.
but I mean, there is this idea in how we judge a story,
Mm-hmm.
especially a story that's sci-fi or fantasy, by it sets the parameters for how its world or its plot works, right?
Yeah.
Those might be kind of silly, there's magic or whatever, right? But we set those parameters. If all of a sudden you say for plot contrivance, magic doesn't work that way, I'm out. That's where I walk away, right? So Ripley's alive, they're doing this experiments. It doesn't make any sense. And I don't know that this is really fair of me because it is a greater logical jump, right? I mean,
Mm.
I admit that. But, you know, I I can also get into this movie easier than I can Alien 3, where the beginning, and the end, but the beginning makes me say, you're doing a lot of violence to the previous film. This does not seem to be a continuation of it. I'm really confused why you'd make these choices. I'm kind of thrown out of the narrative from the get-go. I think that doesn't make sense, but let's see where you go with this, right? And they don't wind up justifying it, but at least the story they tell doesn't involve a ton of bizarre additional things that I have to suspend disbelief on.
See, I would say that it does, because that's the
Okay,
thing. I think
fair.
because you said about this doesn't have um taking a weird turn. The finale does, because not only we then sort of we're told that Ellen Ripley has been in spliced, as you sort of put it, with the alien. So she's got acid blood or like light. They also highlight it because she's got green fingernails and they're supposed to be incredibly sharp, which never comes up, but is kind of sort of highlighted. But at the end, we realise that the thing that was taken out of, I think, is supposed to be the version of the whatever it is that's taken out of Ripley at the start of the film is then left off becomes is a queen. We find out, and
Mhm.
her DNA has been spliced back with that, and we have this whole scene of Brad Dourif, who I kind of love because he's Chucky and I like he's got a great voice and stuff. But he has some good scenes in this, but he's all spliced into the wall. He's got the goo on him, and it's all hardened, the resin or whatever. Well, he's then going about about how she has given her the gift that she has given the alien queen is the human reproduction. So instead of laying eggs, it then pans out and you have this alien queen sort of go, and she's got a huge stomach, and an alien bursts out of that looks half human, none of that works. So that's where he takes a left turn. I'm like, yeah, no,
Maybe.
this
Yeah.
is we
Yeah, but I
what the hell
mean,
is this?
those are for me just kind of like, yeah, the whole thing you're doing with the aliens from the get-go of splicing them and creating hybrids and all this kind of stuff, I mean, is all sort of, daft. I mean, you're not supposed to think about it too much. But I mean, in fairness, everything about the alien species has been daft and stupid since the first movie.
Yes.
Let's be absolutely clear. I mean, why do they have these enormous eggs that are, so inefficient that you're laying all these giant eggs that then only produce this tiny little face hugger? You think about like the size of an egg compared to the animal that is produced out of it. Normally, the animal barely fits inside that egg by the time it's done growing. Here, it's just a little top, so a face hugger can pop out, right? And the alien is producing these enormous eggs. Then then they go through a cycle where is it getting all the mass to grow from, this tiny little thing that bursts out of a chest into a full-size alien. And that's just in the first one. Then you've got this ridiculous looking queen in the second one who turns out to be this action, the final boss. I mean, and then all the previous ones were just drones. I mean, look, they're coming up with this on the fly. I mean, and none of it makes any sense. So to me, by the time I'm in the fourth one, I'm like, yeah, it's 200 years later. They've been doing genetic experiments. That's all the hand waving I really need. It's not really, I'm annoyed by it, but it's hard for me to be too annoyed by it because they've already screwed this up beyond recognition.
I see what you're saying, and I agree to an extent. I think it's more this weird thing of that's not how genetics works. That's the problem. Like this whole thing of the alien, you're saying like the queen looks ridiculous but one of the things that you and I have said before is like, yeah, but they're alien, so I don't mind them looking ridiculous, whatever, because it's an alien. Like it's supposed to look weird, and I agree that the life cycle doesn't make sense, but like fine. Like they keep trying to explain it and they shouldn't, but I don't mind that. I'm less bothered by that because they're not pointing at it constantly. This film kind of wants to keep pointing to you about the genetic splicing, and I'm just screaming, going, "But it doesn't work! It doesn't work like that. That's not how these things work." Like we see, even like the fly. You say about the fly. Even in the fly, like it highlights, like this is not shouldn't be how it works. Like I'm morphing into this thing. Like it's sort of, and we even said it in that, like, yeah, it's kind of ridiculous and you got to accept it, but at least that's a single one-off kind of thing, and it's about the body horror and all this other stuff rather than that. This film's about the experimentation, and if you're going to make something that's about science and you're going to have scientists in the film, you need to have like at least some adherence to actual science. And you can't be like, well, it's hundreds of years into the future. Then no. There's still basics you've got to adhere to. It just infuriates me. It just pisses me off.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I think all of that is fair. I'm not going to disagree with you about the logic of any of this. I think if you just look at a plot summary of what this is doing to the aliens and, all of the genetic points of how Ripley's alive and how the aliens are alive and how these new forms of aliens are there, none of it really makes sense. And all of it is groan-worthy and awful.
Yes, I agree.
I agree, right? I'm not going to mince words. There you are. What is working for me is that I finally get to see like the military doing these experiments, like all along, this has been like this threat. The military can't get their hands on it. No, they've gotten their hands on it. And what they're doing is awful and, potentially catastrophic. And, you have terrible genetic experiments going on. And we're actually seeing that. And that stuff is working. Also, the ship, because of this convenient plot device of if it's in trouble, it heads back to Earth. There's actual stakes here. So it's not just like, oh, we've got to escape, there's an alien, okay, here are some random convicts, hope they don't die, Chuck, here it's like, oh no, there's a threat to Earth because of this. So I think this is a better job on those two levels in terms of just telling a story that I care about. And then it does a better job with the actors. It just does a better job with like, I know who the characters are. I'm amused by their interactions. Sometimes it's a little over the top, but but I'm entertained by it. And it's not, you're right. The basic premise is bad, but there's stuff that's working here that's not working in most of the Alien films, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I realize what this is as I'm talking about it. This is a Dark Horse comic.
Yeah.
That's what do you know what I mean? That now I'm thinking about it, you see you describe all those things. I'm like, oh, this is what Dark Horse was doing at the time. This feels like a side comic that was done. And again, like I actually agree, there were certain characters in this. There's certain character actors in this that I really enjoy. Both Dan Hedaya as General Perez. He's someone I like when he pops up in things, and also Michael Wincott is another one that again they're sort of character actors that sort of just popped up in stuff, and I'm like, oh yeah, I like you. You're cool. You've got a good presence. And as you say, Sigourney Weaver and Winona Ryder are actually really good, and Ron Perlman is always a delight. Like he's one of those actors that seems to just turn up and makes things better by his presence. Um, so I agree. I feel the cast is better. I like the fact that they're smugglers, and obviously, like you said, the military are doing something illicit, and it's called out. Like the Michael Wincott's character Elgin actually says, like, if this is clearly illegal because you're doing this outside of sanctioned space, and the military doesn't usually use smugglers to bring you humans in status tubes. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
and he's
Which is
almost
dark, by the way.
oh
Like,
yes
like you want to say like the illegal sale of organs is dark. Here they're just selling humans who have been in
yeah
stasis tubes. Like this is pretty for experiments with aliens.
yeah.
This is some dark shit.
Oh no, and I like that. That's a good idea, especially when they sort of there's a sort of a hint of where did you get them? Don't ask, kind of thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
they don't want to know where these people have come from. Um, so I like that. That sort of stuff's all working. I actually kind of like some of the design aesthetics as well. The clothing and some of the design. It's sort of like when you get to this sort of time of like, oh, we're going to the far future. How are we going to design things? Big boots and no sleeves. Cool. All right, I'm down with that. Um, yeah, so all that's good in a sense of like I enjoy some of those scenes, and when they're interacting and they work relatively well. But the problem is, as things ramp up and those stakes sort of ramp up, I actually feel like the characters become. It's clear who the red shirts are, if you know what I mean. Um, like this group's relatively small, but it's still like, oh, here's the people we're going to kill off because they don't really matter. Um, and so yeah, so the dialogue between the groups then becomes kind of heavy towards certain characters, which I'm like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, Ron Perlman's now getting all the dialogue, and it's all this, it's all that. It, yeah, I don't know. You say it's fun, and there are bits that are fun, but I just find this film drags. I find that the middle act is both
Wow.
fun. Yeah, I don't know. I just find overall the film drags, like really does drag. Um, despite there being it's only got 1 hour 49 minutes, but I feel that time. Um, and you say the stakes, but I just don't. Again, I don't feel like the stakes matter. There was a weight with some of the previous films. I actually feel like with Alien that and there's it's just people trapped in a claustrophobic environment, and you sort of feel those stakes as they're being killed off one by one. Aliens, I think, sort of has that sort of stakes. Yeah, the end, I think, produces contrived stakes, as we sort of said, with Ripley running around with the flamethrower and the pulse rifle. But with this, like when it's sort of all said and done, and it's like, oh, we've got to stop aliens from getting to Earth because the ship's in it's entered in its sequence, it's going to return to Earth. Well, there's several things in this that sort of like feel stupid. And there was also about the genetics, right? But the other thing is, I don't know anything really about Winona Ryder's character, Call, right? We find out she's a synthetic. She's been sent there. Well, she's part of this pirate group, but then finds out that Ripley's there, so decides to try and kill her because she figures out. I don't know what that plot point means. Like, is she part of a group that knows about this history, and
Well,
therefore is it?
isn't it that yeah, I don't know exactly. But I mean, she's like a later model that the AI, the androids built
Yeah, second
themselves,
gen they call it. Yeah,
like, right. So somewhere in that 200 missing years, these androids from the previous film have started building better models who are sort of universally reviled.
Yeah.
But she gets, I mean, I just come back to, like, on a scene by scene basis, this works.
Mm. This
Yeah,
is where I disagree. No, this is where I disagree because
okay.
I don't think it does because I'm not able to put anything together. Where I'm like, why is Cole so bothered by Ripley being there? Because you're a droid. What you know, if humans are wiped out, you're never going to worry about it. You can't be infected by a face hugger because you're a droid. Like, I don't understand and why are droids so upset by this thing? Like, how do you have this information? Why does it matter? How does she get drunk later? Like, I don't understand why anyone does anything in this film. Like, even this version of Ripley's like, we've got to destroy everything. I'm like, okay, cool, fine. I can sort of take that. It's some sense genetic memory, which I get irritated by. But more than that, one of the things that's clearly established in the previous films is the ships cannot return to Earth. That's why we have the space stations that Ripley's on at the beginning of Aliens. So this thing of like it's going to return to Earth, I'm like, your ship is huge. It will
Yeah,
not
that's
return.
true.
It will not return to the atmosphere of Earth. It cannot sustain flight.
Oh,
That's
I
not
don't
how
think it's
space.
intended to return to
No, 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 no,
land
no.
on her.
No, it is because
Is
Ripley
it?
then, yes, because Ripley then says we have changed the landing sequence so that the landing point is
Mm,
now less or is into the Earth. So it'll just ram into the Earth. So that they fully intend to
that's
land it
right.
on Earth,
Yeah.
which is horseshit. So
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, I don't know, like, how far it is from Earth, but we don't really know anyway. I mean, it could be a military installation that's not that far. I don't know. I mean, it seems better than, you know, happening to land next to a prison,
yeah, no,
to me.
the
I mean,
happenstance of Alien 3 is crap, and I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think it's ridiculous. I don't know. I just use it scene to scene. I can see that like a scene. This is the thing. Like I can go a scene worked. The basketball scene works. Right? Fine. They come in. The pirates are rude and misogynistic, and Ripley sort of teaches them a lesson,
mm.
kicks their ass, and then throws the ball over her head and gets the swoosh in the basketball
And
net.
she's a superhero at this point,
Yeah,
basically. Like,
exactly.
yeah.
And that happened. Like they did that, and they had to cut. Like the editors had real problems because I don't know if you've ever heard this about Ron
No.
Perlman's response. So they'd been rehearsing that scene and practiced it, and then he'd always had this thing. And he was supposed to have a line. There was something else he was supposed to say after it got in, and so she actually did that right after numerous accounts. But instead of saying the line, Ron Perlman was just like "fucking hell." And
My
just was basically not really impressed, and then like gathered himself and was like, "Oh shit!" So they had to cut
life.
it. Yeah, yeah. So they're like, "Well, we can't do that again. That's never happening again." Like, so that you'll see that scene cuts quite abrupt. Like she walks off, and they cut very abruptly on Ron Perlman's character, which fair play to him. Like he was like apparently very apologetic and stuff, and they worked around it, but. All power to Sigourney Weaver for netting that, to be honest. Fine, I
Well,
like
but I
that
mean,
scene.
like the shot with you talk about the android character,
Yeah,
and the shot with her pulling a mole out of her skin and then speaking, intercepting the comm system, and she's in like the chapel, and clearly based on Alien 3 there's some version of like Christianity in this future, and it's a cool looking like little side chapel on the ship, and she's wrestling with what her purpose is, as an android in a way that I haven't seen other androids wrestle. Like that scene is working. I mean, it looks beautiful. It's working for me. Again and
yeah.
again.
See, I
You
disagree on
know,
that scene as well. This is another thing that's like this thing of, and I've always been bothered by this in all, and I've said this before. I've called it out for the other films as well. This thing of everyone all of a sudden understanding Android technology. oh, I can hook up Bishop to do this, or I can hook up Ash to give me this information and shit. Like, I don't know how to my TV works. Like, I barely know how. Like, I don't know how I can hook up this shit. It really irritates me. So this thing then of when she's like, "Oh, we'll just disconnect this Bible screen thing that looks like a Bible but has a screen in it and gives you all the Bible verses. You can now take this plug, which is clearly like a 1990s amp plug, which is kind of funny, and she can put it in her arm, and using that, which was previously connected to a Bible, she can connect into this ship's launch computer. I've always hated this in films when they're like, I can hack in from this one terminal, even like R2D2 feeding into stuff. It just winds me up because I'm like, even today we have isolated systems with sort of all
Yeah.
these things that like don't work like that. The systems don't integrate like that. It
Yeah,
kind
except I mean, what is she? She's just connecting to like comps, right? Like she's not.
no, she's connecting to whatever the
She's
hell was
closing
plugged.
some doors and stuff.
I
Yeah,
don't know what the fuck
but
she's
she's
doing.
she's not able to like change the trajectory of the ship.
No, all right. So why is it that she's able to sort of navigate in? No, because she plugs into the ship's computer. That's the voice that comes out of her.
Right.
Father, it's called in this. Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
I've had mother before, but she's closing doors and doing stuff. Why is that Bible connected to a system?
I don't know. I that is something I thought about too, but I just don't care for some reason because I'm enjoying the scene.
And
I mean,
because this is the thing that, but because I'm getting more increasingly irritated by it, I am picking up these things and going, this is stupid. I'm disliking this more and more as it goes on for these very reasons. Where I'm going for things again that get called out in Aliens. They literally say that the only way we can do this is by getting out to that terminal. There is a danger in doing this. We have to send Bishop because we can't just plug into something. We
I
have
hate
to
that
get.
about aliens. I mean, I hate
No,
that
I'd
about
like that
aliens.
because it says that's how this works. That's what that piece of thing is for, and that's what you've got to get to. I can't just plug into
I like
anything to do it.
I like the idea of what you're saying. The logic of what you're saying. But in Aliens, it just is like a plot complication. Like it doesn't do anything. We don't really, it's not really a challenge. It's just a reason for Bishop to go away for a while and then come
Mm.
back and save the day. I mean, it just is so transparently a plot complication to me. There might be some underlying logic behind it, but it seems contrived to me. Here, I think, well, yeah, it's dumb, but I've seen it a million times before. That somebody plugs into a system. I don't know why it has to be in this Bible, but at least I'm getting like a cool looking chapel, and I'm entertained by the dialogue and the characters, and that's better than I'm used to.
Yeah,
I don't
see
know.
that.
I mean,
No, this because yeah, this is where I'm not entertained by this stuff. This is the problem. Like aesthetically, I think this film does look good. I think it's some really good shots, especially some of the ships. I like some of the design work. Um, but again, there's things like this is meant to be like 300. This is like what 300 years into our future. Okay.
mhm.
And I like the fact they've got the grubbiness. I always, I have a preference for like the industrial sort of like look and all this other stuff. But the character in the wheelchair, right? I know I've known elderly people that have used motorized um motorized wheelchairs and they've been quite sort of set up and stuff. Why is this character, um Vriss, why has he got one that's built like some sort of like armored tank with like multiple wheels and all this stuff? And it's like it just kind of feels like they're going, oh, we've got to make this look really bulky. And I'm like, that seems really inefficient when you're trying to get around a ship. Like that's massive. That's really problematic. Like I don't know, it's just things like that. I'm like, that looks stupid. That looks stupid to me. Where I'm going, that's a bad choice. Like
Yeah, I mean,
logistically, that looks stupid.
I see what you're saying. I mean, I don't think what you're saying is wrong. I am just like I like that he's concealed, like he's got all the parts of this, rifle kind of shotgun thing, concealed in different parts, and he's able to get through the scanners. I like the way they smuggle the guns and
Mm,
weapons on board. Um, and I like the way he is, being conveyed on somebody's back, and then,
That's cool. I'm happy with
like
that.
all,
That's
all
fine.
that stuff is cool. I mean, like, this is a throwaway character that I'm at least like entertained by, and I know something about him. Like, he's interesting, he's unique, he gets some cool scenes. Like, you're right. I mean, that wheelchair doesn't need to be so bulky, but neither does Davros need to be driving around in a gigantic box. I mean, I I don't know. I mean, that doesn't bother me so much, and I guess I'm just more willing to kind of like go with those scenes with him. Whereas I feel like in most of the other movies, I don't even remember a distinguishing feature about 90% of the crew.
Yeah, and this is where I disagree. But I find that I can remember like Hicks and Vasquez and all those kinds of things, and the characters from Alien. I can remember that these just end up blurring in together. Like the guys. What's it? Gary Dorden plays Christie. And he's got like you know, the shootout guns and stuff. And I think that, yeah, again, some cool design work. I like that. It's kind of cool. But his
Mm-hmm.
sacrifice later on, right? They've gone through all the. We'll talk about the underwater scene, but they're climbing up these ladders, which I'm not entirely sure what this all sort of how. We've talked about geography. I'm not entirely sure why. Again, this is a space station. Why is part of it flooded? That's clearly a
Yes.
massive flaw. Um, but he's got Vriss on his back because obviously Vriss can't walk, so they're climbing up this ladder. An alien jumps out, grabs them, and then they end up switching places, and Vriss is sort of holding on to him. And then they kill the alien because Ron Perlman's character does this thing where he falls backwards and starts firing randomly at people in the ladder below him, which is both kind of cool and stupid at the same time, but
True.
totally in character for him. So I accept that. But then they shoot and kill the alien, and it's just hanging off Christie's foot. But he never goes, well, I'm going to shake this off. I'm never going to try and shake my foot. He just starts unhooking himself because he's sprayed with alien blood and he might be a liability. And I'm like, no, just what? Like, I don't understand why you make
Take
it.
your
What?
boot off.
Take your boots off.
Yeah.
Shake your leg. Like, there are so many things where I'm like, why are you sacrificing yourself? Like this, I don't understand. What are you doing to protect the group? And then
Yeah,
like when he
that's
falls
that's
in, he's like, they're like,
totally
no, and you're like, for what? What? He was an idiot. Like he was baggage at this point. Like this is stupid.
That's fair. And that is one of my pet peeves in movies, is the unnecessary sacrifice that we're
Yeah.
supposed to feel bad about. Um, yeah, for some reason it doesn't bother me here, but I mean, you're right, logically. You know what I think it is we're on the fourth movie. I think my expectations are so low at this point, especially given my complaints of the prior movies, that I'm like, yeah, this has some style. I'm entertained. It's got some new ideas. Like, I'm more interested in Ripley. I see flaws with that action sequence, with going through the kitchen with the water. The number one flaw I see is like, no, bullets and rockets don't move like that
Oh,
underwater.
yeah.
That's more of an annoyance to me. But you're right that I mean, so like the point about geography is the same point we've made about all of these movies.
Mm-hmm.
We have
Mm-hmm.
literally made the same point. Like, we're in the fourth movie that we've made this point. I think at this point, maybe I've just given up caring. And I feel like it's the fourth movie. Like, at this point, it's like, you would know these franchises better than I do, but like it's like by the time I get to like the fourth Halloween movie, I don't have a lot of standards, like
Oh no,
I just want an
that's a fair shout for that
entertaining movie,
franchise. Yeah, that's a fair shout
right?
for that franchise. Yeah,
Like,
most
you,
definitely.
you know what I'm saying? Like especially after Alien 3, it's like this feels like such a step up for me. I actually care about the characters. I'm not, there's stuff that bothers me logically, but there's stuff that's bothered me logically about all of these movies.
It
You
bothers
know,
me more here though, and I like Alien 3, and I appreciate they've got major problems, and as you say, sort of hurts the previous films. Fine. But there's something about this that just starts to sort of grow as an irk to me. Like, it's sort of like, okay, this is annoying me, this is annoying me. And by the end, by about a third of the way through it, I'm almost against the film. But you see, like, I'm liking the
hmm.
characters. I'm now going like, yeah, Winona Ryder's kind of grating on me now. Like I know she's being good, but like the character's irritating me. Like, it's like she switches sides all of a sudden. She likes Ripley because Ripley kills an alien, shotgun through somebody's chest and like, okay, why does she change allegiances all of a sudden? Now she's willing to sort of like defend Ripley, and Ron Perlman's character's fun, and then starts to grow like, oh, he's an idiot, but like, why is he surviving over others? And it's just things like that start sort of like the fact I'm thinking these things tells me like I don't care about anybody in this film.
Yeah, I mean, I do think you care more. Like, I never remember that Hicks survives Aliens. I never remember any of the characters from Aliens. Like, I straight up hate them. I do not remember any of those characters. I forget the Mad About You guy is even in it. Every time that I watch it, I'm like, oh, that guy from Mad About You is in it. I don't remember that. You know, I don't remember any of those fucking characters. I remember Newt, but I'm annoyed by her. And then I'm like, oh yeah, now this is why I'm annoyed by her. You know, I'm I don't know why. I'm just amused by these characters. And scene after scene, I love that Ripley is sympathetic toward the aliens. There's this kind of like sympathy throughout. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. She's against them. She knows they have to be destroyed, but she doesn't have the same sort of like antipathy toward them of the previous films. And I find her personality,
so
her
why
sort of
is that? Why does she
but
have
she's
that?
part alien. She feels this kind of like she's connected by the force to all the other aliens. I mean, that's basically what it is.
Yeah, I
That's
agree.
stupid.
It is
But,
stupid
of
because she
course
also
it's
has,
stupid.
but she has all the
Of course it's
memories.
stupid. But we're in the fourth movie of a franchise that said stupid shit every movie.
So why is Sigourney Weaver in it?
Why was she in Alien 3? I
Well,
mean,
this is my problem. But this is what you said. That's my problem with this. You're saying, oh, she's connected to. This whole premise is ridiculous. She has all the genetic memories of being Ellen Ripley, so she can remember all this other stuff. But she's connected to the aliens, so she's now conflicted about how to sort of deal with them and stuff. But she's the one that says they have to be destroyed. They can't get to Earth. They have to be destroyed. It's her decision. So I'm like, oh, I don't know. It just the whole thing. It doesn't need to be Ripley. This whole thing of like, oh, we need a name attached to this. It's just it. So
well, I mean, it does because they decided it was Sigourney Weaver's franchise, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, look, Aliens kind of needs it to be Ripley. Alien 3 could just be somebody who had an encounter with aliens landed there. It doesn't need to be Ripley. I mean, this doesn't need to be Ripley. You're right. But Sigourney Weaver's great. And watching her character evolve, and I love this version of Sigourney Weaver. I'm like, I watch this and I'm like, as I'm watching this, I'm like, I want to see the next two movies featuring Sigourney Weaver playing like a superhero alien hybrid fighting aliens. Like, and there's this other, human there, and there's this, I love Winona Ryder. And this is, she, I mean, she's amazing. And I want to see her as the robot sidekick of the superhero, fighting alien. I'm totally down for those movies. Are they going to be the smartest movies? No, of course not. This is stupid, but I don't know. I mean, I do think as we're talking, I'm sort of realizing how much of my response to this is based on this being the fourth movie.
Yeah.
And just feeling like, give me something entertaining, give me, some kind of novel, interesting thing that, it's just fun on screen, and I'm pretty much satisfied.
Yeah. I think because it is the fourth film, but my expectations aren't high. But it's the fact it's off air. We were talking about Prometheus and Covenant in a certain, and I feel the same about
And
those.
remind me, you love those, right?
Oh yes, two favorite films, 1 and 2, and they sometimes switch. No, yeah, and I think it's this thing of if you're going to have ideas and you're going to extend the lore of things, which this film wants to do, and those other awful bag of shit films do as well. then it needs to make sense, and you need to be really thinking it through. This feels just like ideas, like someone's gone, right, we need to bring Sigourney Weaver back because she's the name on the franchise. Oh, okay, well, there was blood in Fury, 116, so we'll clone her. Cloning's big right now. Let's do clones. And then the story just spans from that, and it just kind of feels arbitrary. Like you said about that other films, but I agree with about Alien 3. Like, it doesn't need to be Ripley. In fact, I can see a version of that where she's not even in it that would be even way more interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
But this just feels I don't know, it
Well,
bothers me from the beginning. It starts to irritate me very, very quickly because of those reasons.
Okay, you're completely right. I mean, I think that if Alien 3 didn't exist, I would probably feel very different about this because like my response to Aliens was the failure of Aliens is that it does not follow through logically on the first one. That it does up to a point, but then, it goes off in different directions and and I feel like as far as stakes go, there are no stakes in that movie. I mean, just nuke it from orbit. You don't need to get off planet. You're going to die anyway. Just, have the Colonial Marines just come by and drop a bomb. Easy. We're done in 15 minutes, Um, and I feel like Alien 3, there's no Bible for these aliens and their life. None of that makes any sense. So by the fourth one, I'm looking for something different. I'm looking for something that's entertaining. I think the idea that Ripley's cloned is interesting. I think that, her reaction to being cloned and to being part of an experiment and basically being discarded, there's a debate about whether even to keep her, is interesting. Her having this different personality gives me an into a character that I found kind of boring for the last two movies, as sort of the bitter, like, I guess I got to do this again. And this movie doesn't feel like one of my problems with Alien 3 is that it does feel like a hybrid of two scripts, right? It does feel like it can't quite decide what it is. This is, superhero Ripley and, the ragtag pirates, fighting for their life on the ship. And it kind of wants to be fun. It kind of wants to, just be entertaining. And so I think that maybe, I just kind of feel like, well, you've already jumped the rails on this franchise. Jumping the rails a little further, doesn't bother me as much at this point. Maybe,
Yeah.
and look, that's just me. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that's the right response.
No, everyone's entitled to different, but that thing of saying, it's almost that thing of saying, well, you fucked up, so you might as well fuck up some more. When I'm going like, yeah, but I wanted you to course correct. Like I wanted something that sort of like, I almost, again, this goes back to something we've said about like, what is the franchise trigger point? Like, what is the pivot of the franchise? And I think they've realized it now that the alien, the xenomorph, is the star. And so, you have enough there now to be able to sort of move on. And that's what this should have been. Of like, Ripley's stories is done. People are going to come back to see the aliens. Let's make a good alien movie. And so, but this contrivance of bringing in Sigourney Weaver through the cloning and stuff. And yeah, I get this thing of like, oh, it's interesting that she's interesting as an actress, sort of taking on this different version of Ripley. Yeah, that's fine. I agree. She actually is very good in this. But the whole conceit is crap. And that's my problem, where I'm going like, yeah, but I don't care. Because if she's a clone, all right, cool. What were the other ones like? Oh, they were all terrible. So she's the only one that's reached this perfect state. All the others were just killed off and kept in formaldehyde and stuff. Like, okay, well,
That does kind of bother me. Yeah, I mean, I kind of want it to be like 100 iterations instead of 12,
yeah.
Like it wouldn't advance that fast that quickly, right?
No.
Iteration by iteration. Yeah, I mean, there are things like that that kind of bother me.
But the other thing I'd like, because there's a scene I really like, actually. I want to sort of bring as a scene I like versus that also highlights part of my problem. I like Brad Dourif. I think he's another sort of character actor that I like sort of seeing in bits and pieces. But there's a scene where he's doing some tests on something. And we see there's like the xenomorphs are in these cages or in these box cells things, and he brings one up, and there's three of them in there, and he watches them, and he does this weird thing where he slides up to it and smooches the window and all this other stuff, and he looks incredibly creepy, and then it sort of headbutts the window, and he sort of flips this thing, presses this big button, and it sort of jets out this gas, and we find out later on it's like liquid gas nitrogen. It's going to freeze them, so it's like an extreme cold all of a sudden that bothers them. Doesn't kill them, but it bothers them, and they aggravate against it. And then he stops, and then it sort of lurches forwards, and his hand goes over the button, and it sort of pulls back, and he's like, "Oh, you're a quick learner."
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, I'm going, "Oh, hang on, how long have you had all these aliens in captivity? Because if we know this is this alien that you've had, we're going to see that there's 12 other. Did you clone them all at the same time? So this is the first time you've had them. Like, are they new? So you didn't know this information, but you have 12 of them. Like, I don't know. How long have you been doing this experimentation on the aliens? I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, this
Because
goes back to the premise of the movie, right? It's like,
yes,
how are they cloning these aliens? How did they clone Ripley? How did they get the aliens? How do we understand the face huggers emerging, by these people, along with extracting this from Ripley's body? I mean, why do you have these three? Okay, granted, all of that does not make sense. But again, having the military experimenting on aliens and finally getting to that point in this franchise after 4 fucking movies, is the right move. And that scene is a cool scene. And I like how they we've already seen in Aliens that, the aliens are intelligent.
yes.
So, seeing the next sort of, another example of that and how they decide to kill one of their own to release the blood. I do kind of wonder, like, shouldn't they have a way of releasing it if it's such a powerful weapon? Like,
Well, they do.
But then,
No, they do, because we see that later in the fucking film. This is where the film is stupid. Two things.
But the Alien franchise is stupid.
Yeah, right, well, fine. But this film in and of itself is stupid. I disagree with your premise on those films. But this one. So, two things. If you know these aliens have got acid blood, right, and you're going to put them in cells to contain them, in multiple versions of them. So there's 3 in there.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say that there are 3.
Oh, I know what you're going to say, right?
Yeah. Why have you not created a substance or a protection that does not get dissolved by the acid?
Yes, very good question. You're completely correct. Yeah,
that's number
absolutely.
1. Later on, Christie, the black guy who sacrifices himself, the reason he gets burnt, the alien spits acid at him.
Yes. Yeah, okay. You're right. That makes no sense, right? So they should have some mechanism, given how damaging their blood is, to use that as a weapon, right? And you're right. We see it later on. This makes no sense. You're totally right. I kind of catch this stuff, and then I say, it's that 4th movie malaise. And I say, yeah, but then again, it doesn't make sense that they have acid for blood anyway. I'm hardcore TM, thing from the first movie that was stupid in the first movie. And as soon as they die, it's suddenly not acidic anymore. It didn't make sense in the first movie, for God's sake. So now it doesn't make sense, and they're using this thing that doesn't make sense in an inconsistent way. And I'm like, yeah, that's a problem. But I mean, we're in the 4th movie of something that you have not bothered to explain or make sense for 4 movies. Am I going to complain about it now?
No, I agree. I think the alien blood thing has been an issue. It's one of those that was introduced as a sort of like a cool mechanism in the first one. We should highlight for the face hugger, and then sort of continued. I'm not even sure if it's expressed as it being part of the xenomorph in the first Alien film. I think it's only in Aliens that it's really confirmed that the larger aliens have acid for blood.
I think you're right.
Um, so it's become a bit of a sort of a sticking point for their physiology. That's kind of like, no, that's what they have, and you go, okay, we're going to deal with that. But if you're going to deal with it, like you say, deal with it consistently. So,
well, what we're highlighting is right after Alien, when you decide to make another movie, you have to sit down and write a Bible of how this alien physiognomy works.
mhm.
And it is crystal clear that nobody ever did that. Nobody cared. It's not like that was done for Aliens and the Discarded. That was not done. This makes none of this ever made any sense. So I'm kind of like, I'm in 4 movies if you failed to do all of the things that I would do, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking about the
And
fourth
you
film in
want
the
the course
franchise.
correction.
Yes.
And you're not wrong, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's if I were in charge of the Alien franchise, that's what I would do. I would say, okay, let's generate that Bible, right? Let's
Yes.
figure out how to
Now
make
is the
even
time.
edits of these movies to,
We've
make them a
lost.
little more consistent.
That's it. We've lost Ripley. We've had the Ripley saga. Now let's sit down, confirm where we're going. Reboot. The 90s weren't about that. I mean, this was just another film to bang out. But I don't know. Yeah, it feels. Yeah, this is the thing that you're seeing the fourth film. I'm thinking about other fourth films in franchises. And it's interesting how we talked about how Terminator is an interesting comparison to this franchise. Like Terminator 3 is often much maligned for the not so much for the same reasons, but like it introduces comedy, it tries to do different things, but like still be the same as Terminator 2, but you know, it introduces sort of
A
like
pale imitation of Terminator 2.
exactly, yeah.
Right? That has the ballsiest ending in cinema history.
100%. Like it literally, yeah, like it introduces Judgment Day. Happy with that. And that is the best part of that. And there are good parts of that film. I will happily defend parts of Terminator 3, just as I would Alien 3. However, for some reason, I'm more receptive to Terminator Salvation because it says, well, we're drawing a line and we're not going to bring anybody back. We're going to jump into the war and we're going to try and do something different. And yeah, it doesn't work. And some of it is god awful. And McGee.
Let's be crystal clear. All of it is god awful from the first frame to the end.
We've never got to it, and maybe we will one day. But
look, what's interesting is both of these fourth movies try to start a new cycle.
Yes.
Right. And both jump ahead to, commit to a new cycle, and both fail and were aborted after one film.
Yes.
Of the two, this is the only one that I ever want to watch again. I'm not saying I'm ever going to be like, I've got 2 hours to kill, I'm going to use it on Alien Resurrection. That is not happening. Having said that, if Alien Resurrection is on the TV and, I'm doing something, I'm probably going to keep it on, and I'm probably going to be surprisingly entertained by it. If Terminator Salvation is on, I am just going to groan and say, what a clusterfuck this is in every single scene. Who thought this would be entertaining? Like, this is a mess. This is boring. It is stupid. The characters are bad. Nothing is entertaining. Nothing makes sense. Nothing even looks good.
We'll get to that film one day. But in all honesty, I will probably rewatch Salvation before I watch Resurrection. And I think maybe that's because I'm I like Terminator film as well. But I don't know. There's something about Salvation irks me or bothers me less than Resurrection. Now, it's not to say that I think that Salvation is a good film. We will talk about that one day. It's not. It fails on almost every level to do what it wanted to do, and introduces some of the stupidest lore ever. But
I do like some of the ideas. I mean,
like
you said, I like,
yeah.
The difference is I give Terminator 3 points for the ideas, that it has the balls to follow through on, and I sort of say like, yeah, the rest of it is just trying to do a pale imitation of T2,
Yes.
It's not as good. It doesn't really work, but obviously it knows audiences want that. But then it follows through and says, never going to do this again, which is like amazing. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I do watch this and I do think I'm enjoying this. I like these characters. Is it stupid? Yeah, of course it's stupid. But I mean, I want to see superhero Ripley. I want to see kind of, I don't know why.
You make a good point. I mean, the thing is, what I will throw in as against myself is there are 90s movies that I watch that I'm like, no, I enjoy this. This is a good film, or like at least I enjoy this film. Like there are dumb, well, any film, I know, like I love Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Granted, that knows it's a stupid film. Um, but there's a period of like 90s sci-fi where I'm like, I like that film. Like but I know it's not a good film. Um, and so I don't know why this one doesn't work for me in that way, where I am sort of watching, it going like, oh no, this is, like The Relic or Mimic or something else where I'm going like, oh, I enjoy that film. That's a good film. Like, I don't know, some of the space ones that were done. Why this one doesn't work for me? And I think partly because I wanted the course correction.
Yes.
That's the
Right.
problem for me where I'm going, those other films are disposable and I'm happy to sort of like watch them and move on, you know. But I'm not maybe attached to them in the same way. And I come to this, I'm like, this is kind of a mess. I'm getting annoyed by certain things. And then we're going to talk about the finale in a minute, the third act in a second. But for some reason, like it just starts to grate on me because I'm like, I feel let down that they didn't go. Alien 3 was a mistake. It didn't work. How do we course correct to become a better
Uh,
film series? And it
yeah,
just
it's
feels like
interesting.
it's just sort of went, we'll do this. Joss Whedon was involved in the writing of this script,
Hmm.
because he was at the time trying to get Buffy and stuff off the ground and sort of was known for being a script hand. He was known to several of the people involved. So he tweaked the script, so he sort of added to the dialogue. So some of the pithiness comes from that apparently, because it was, it wasn't there before. So I don't know. It feels like they were aiming to go, I was just making a film, bang it out. Let's make it, which works for you, and that's what I'm hearing. You're going, yeah, but this is a fun fourth entry into a franchise, but
See, I think everything depends on it being the fourth film.
yeah.
Everything, both of our reactions are totally based on the franchise.
Mhm.
And I think your reactions are I still am puzzled by, given these feelings of sort of like, you know, focusing on what the franchise should be doing, why you're more forgiving of Aliens 3. Alien 3.
Mhm.
Um, I sort of feel like I have the same response as you do, but I front load it, right? So my feeling is like Alien 3 is repugnant. Like it is the one that like Aliens is even in need of a course correction, right? Like in my mind, right? Like Aliens needs to a little bit of a course correction. But Alien 3 is like we have jumped the shark, you know. And so by the time I get to 4, you know, my expectations are low, and at this point I just want a fun movie that gives me the alien killing people and is doing something a little different that's entertaining on screen on a scene by scene level. And I feel like, in my opinion, that's what I get here. Is it smart? No. Is it course correcting? No, absolutely not. You're completely right. um yeah, I mean, I do think there's a case to be made that even after Alien 3, the franchise was intellectually, I mean, from an artistic standpoint, salvageable. That, there was really one entry that had veered off course, and you could
Mhm.
really, you know, do something smart and good and kind of refine the mythology, bring it under control. Um, there certainly is an argument to that. I'm amazed by how much I don't enjoy or am not as impressed with the previous films as I remember. And it's funny, like going through Mad Max, I was just consistently blown away by, how amazing they are episode by episode. And the Alien movies have been kind of the opposite for me. And I'm a fan of the Alien franchise, but I wanted to course correct, right? But it seems clear to me that, like, if you see Prometheus as going off in a terrible direction, it had been doing that for many films. Like every single film was, going off in another direction with
don't get me
no
wrong.
map.
This is where, to me, and I think Prometheus and Covenant look great. I think they utilize modern special effects technology fantastically. I think there's some, again, shot well, good cast, blah, blah. Hate those films because of the lore and stuff they introduce, which makes no sense. I think is almost offensive in both a sort of science fiction and sort of narrative way. I think they're garbage. I absolutely loathe those films. I think this is the thing with franchises as well. I think the same about the Terminator franchise. I think there was a massive course correct. They were like, okay, we're going to make Terminator Genesis after Salvation. I think Genesis is not just a bad Terminator film. I think it's legit one of the worst films I've ever seen. I hate that film with a passion. But one of the things I find interesting
I
is
can't wait to talk about these movies with you, because I kind of perversely love Genesis, but it's bad. It's bad for sure.
Oh,
I mean, it's bad, but it's kind of fun. It's kind of like a brilliant idea.
But this is where all these films. No, but I think this comes to a really interesting point. Firstly, I think we should talk. The point to make is fourth entries are a fascination point because most film franchises shouldn't reach that point.
Mm-hmm.
This film, 1997, when this came out, also the same year as Batman and Robin, which again, a bit of a death knell, I think, for that. That sort of killed off the Batman franchise for almost 10 years. We've said about Terminator Salvation, Alien Resurrection. There were the other ones that I think sort of have done this kind of thing, where the fourth film, for example, Mad Max Fury Road is the fourth. But that's a reboot kind of. There's more into that. I was looking over at some of the franchises on the shelf, and I'm like, yeah, if anyone's ever watched the fourth Rambo film, or like Rocky 4 is another good example of the same problem, where they tell the first three films tell an all-out story, the rise, all near fall, and then the saving grace of Rocky Balboa, and they're like, what should we do for the fourth one? We're going to have him beat the communist Russians in boxing. And you're like, okay. Like, it makes no sense. Like, the fourth film is a propaganda piece, out and out. I love that film because it's cheesy and stupid, but it clearly tonally does not fit with the rest of that franchise. And they try and course correct with Rocky 5, make it more of a dramatic drama and all sorts of things. And again, overcorrect it and it goes to shit. It's this fascinating thing of these overcorrections and stuff, this swinging franchises.
I have an interesting parallel. The Superman films.
I was about to mention Superman, yes.
So the first one is sort of brilliant, reinvigorates the genre. It's got flaws in retrospect, but, just like Alien, reinvents a genre, is like the touchstone for an entire genre. The second one is kind of trying to continue the story from the first one very carefully, but doesn't know how to end. Both of that and Aliens don't know how to end themselves and kind of fall apart in the conclusion. Superman 3, disaster. Like we don't know where to go. Just, don't ignore any of the logic of the first two and just do something, right?
Yes.
Much like Alien 3. And then the Quest for Peace.
Yeah, that's a really good example.
You know what? I kind of like the Quest for Peace, because at that point, my standards are so low that I'm like, I just want to see more Superman do something remotely new and interesting. And I'm like, he's trying to get rid of nuclear weapons. That's awesome. Like, I love that movie. And it's not a good movie, but I kind of love that movie and the spirit of that movie.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it in a while, but I don't hold myself to this, when we do them. But
we'll get to it one day. We really will. We must. But yeah,
that's an interesting kind of, like, where the third and the fourth both kind of are like, we don't know where to go.
But
Let's
I think
just
this,
do something.
but I think you are right. I think this holds to lots of franchises. Um, you said about the Halloween franchise earlier on, and I think that's a fine example. They did the first two films, you know, Halloween 2 kills Michael Myers, and then the next one they come back and they're like, we're going to do an anthology series. This one's about masks and in Celtic magic. And everyone's like, where's Michael? He's not in it. We just wanted to do something different. And it's a massive flop. In retrospect, it's been reevaluating. People going, actually, as a film, kind of stands up as a silly sort of, you know, Halloween film. But they bring back Michael in 4, you know, Curse, you know, what it's called now, Return of Michael Myers. But like Jamie Lee Curtis doesn't want to come back. No one comes back and says, oh, okay, Christ, we're now going to re-establish lore and legacy and all this other stuff. And it becomes a mess. Like it literally goes off and says, you're right. There's this kind of like, with film, Freddy Krueger's the same. They make him funny in the third one. They do something completely different from the other ones. Happens that the third one's more successful. But then 4, 5, and 6, he gets increasingly funnier because he becomes the star rather than the point. Yeah, it's an odd, isn't it? How like franchises kind of shift based on how do we continue this story.
Well, you know, another thing that I'm realizing about Alien Resurrection is that we're at a point where the aliens start looking good. Now, the aliens swimming and stuff, you know, could look a little better. There are some, you know, sort of growing pains here. But the alien in Alien does not look good. Okay. The entire point of the movie is to hide the alien. And the one time that you see its whole body when it's going out of the airlock, it looks bad. And that's the best. That's the stuff that got on screen, right? Aliens kind of, you know, doesn't look good. Alien 3 has the, you know,
CGI problem.
Yeah, CGI, and you know, I mean, a lot of it is like puppets and stuff that don't really, you know, there's a lot of like amateur green screen stuff going on. It doesn't look good. And then it's starting to look good. And that's a big part of why, you know, I really struggle with this. It's a big part of why I like I wouldn't say I like Prometheus, but you know, why I like Covenant. And I like the more recent Alien stuff is just that they look good. And I think part of it's like the technology is caught up with the alien physiology.
The concept of what they wanted to the Geiger concept.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so here I'm entertained by the characters, I'm entertained by, you know, one scene after another, even if they don't all fit together that well or in any logical pattern. I think you're right. But the aliens look good to me. And I know that's fascistic and silly of me, but
no, I agree with the design. I actually do agree. Some of the special effects in this are very good. They'd use some animatronics, but some of the, you know, there is some dodgy CGI. The aliens underwater sometimes looks. What's funny is early CGI, 90s CGI, has not benefited from the 4K transfer, like HD. All of a sudden, you're like, oh, I kind of got away with this on cassette, on video, and DVD, even to an extent. But now you're into like HD and 4K, and it looks obvious. Like, you know, I wouldn't say bad, but it looks obvious. So I agree. I think some of the special effects in this and the design work is actually really cool. So, and even some of the, I said, the model work and stuff like that thing where it's sort of when you have Brad Dourif sort of like sort of smooch up to one against that window and it headbutts the window and stuff. It looks good. I think all that looks kind of cool. So I agree with you on that front, definitely. Let's talk about design though. Let's talk about the finale of this film. So we have the sort of the chase element. They're breaking their way through the ship. Blah 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 blah.
They get through the flooded kitchen.
They get through the flooded kitchen in a space station.
And up the well, I mean, again, I think all of these movies have had abundance of water.
I don't understand. I do not understand the need for water in these things. It's weird. Anyway, Cole, Winona Ryder gets shot. They think she's dead, but then she manages to come back, open the doors to this lift shaft, and saves the day. and it's revealed that she's a robot. Blah 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 blah. All right, so we're now going to crash the ship into Earth. That's them, but they're going to get away on um a mini ship.
Lander kind of
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
basically a drop ship. It's the ship that it's the pirate ship, isn't it? It turns out Ripley can work it because she said it's older than me. So apparently they're still using spacefaring technology that's over 200 years old. I wouldn't go out in a ship that's 200 years old, but okay. We then get this thing. There's two bits in this I wanted to quickly talk about before the proper finale. They've had this guy called Purvis, who was one of the people that they smuggled onto the ship, and he has a growing alien embryo in him. And you
I
also
quite like that, by the way, as you discover that he has it, and Ripley's like, he's dead anyway. Ripley has no bedside manner whatsoever. I mean, again, the scenes work for me. I quite like it.
I like him as a character. I think the concept of like this thing of like they're taking him along, and I'm going like, why? We know what's going to happen. Like this seems, but they're going to freeze him and take him off to try and find a way of saving him.
Yeah,
so
in theory, they could freeze him, right?
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, cool. That's kind of compassionate. I'm fine with that. That's kind of cool. But then they get attacked by the Doctor, and there's this whole sort of standoff, and it culminates in Purvis basically sort of charging this scientist down while screaming, getting shot at, punches him, and then smashing his head on the floor while everyone sort of stood around going like, "The fuck is going on?" And then holding him up against his chest, and uses the birthing of the alien through his chest as a weapon to kill this scientist. Now it's supposed to be
badass.
It's supposed to be ironic because this is a weapon scientist that was trying to sort of turn them into weapons, and he gets killed by one. Fine. You see, it's badass. That scene is so cartoony to me, where he's screaming and smashing his head against the floor. Like it's, I don't know. It's again. It's this thing of a good idea.
For me.
It's what see. This is what I'm good. It's a good idea, but they executed so poorly that I'm like, I can't stick with this anymore. Like it's really starting to bother me.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me. I mean, but again, I think that's lowered expectations.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's like, I like that he, figures I'm going out anyway. I'm going to be the one to bite the bullet in this case, and kills the weapon guy. It's
a better sacrifice. It's a better sacrifice than Christie's previously.
Falling off the ladder.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's true. But I mean, and I do like, look, this is an alien movie. You're gonna have a lot of characters. Most of them are gonna die. A couple get heroic sacrifices. The timing of the facehugger happening to burst out at this moment is more what bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I think, but we saw that as Ripley fell to her death in Alien 3, and that was a million times worse. Like, yes, it's convenient. It bothers me, but it's like, yeah, that's the thing you can do with aliens that they haven't done yet, No, I
agree with that. I love the idea. In fact, if it was, but like this whole beating him up thing before it happens kind of is where it bothers me. Like if you just held him in a headlock or something, just held him there if it was quicker, like I think it'd be more effective. So the other thing then, we'll get to the final now, because it's basically Ripley's been fallen through the floor and she's sort of sucked into a jelly mold of aliens. Like I don't know quite.
I love that shot. It's this. So Ripley like falls through the floor, and they look at her, and she's in like. The reason why I love it is because it looks like a Giger painting.
Yes,
it looks like this woman, this obviously identifiable human woman, in just a sea of alien flesh. That's just like horrifying, like nightmare fuel. I love that shot. It doesn't really make sense. I don't know how are all those aliens there? Are they separate aliens or what? Is this just like the walls that we had in the basement of Aliens? I don't know.
Don't know. It looks amazing. Good, especially when she's absorbed and it sort of like pulls her in. That does look cool, and so I like that. So that's what I was going to make. That's what I wanted to make. Actually, is that thing she falls and it looks cool. Like it's a great shot, and it's executed well. So it's one of the things I think is executed well. But this brings us to the end, where to make sure we know what's going on, we have Brad Dourif pinned to a wall and slimed up and all this other stuff, giving us some weird monologue about oh, the mother, and it's all this weird sort of intoned thing about what Ripley has given to the alien queen, which I assume is what we see taken from her at the beginning of the film.
I don't know.
It has a big stomach, it bursts open, and one of the worst designed creatures of anything I've ever seen before pops out in a slimy, semi-skull, semi-alien thing and starts making weird baby noises. And I completely disengaged from this film.
Yeah. This is kind of like the bone alien looking thing.
Yeah.
At the end. Yeah. I don't know. I again, the genetics of this make no sense, right? This is but there's something here that's interesting, right? I mean, it's the Ripley being an alien human hybrid but looking human. This thing is an alien human hybrid but looks alien, right? These are two different possibilities. And I mean, if you're going to go this route, this seems like a more interesting kind of route to take it than what happens in Prometheus and Covenant with, the experiments, to make various iterations to get to the xenomorphs. I mean, it's an idea. It's I have mixed feelings about it because I kind of feel like, I want the Alien franchise to figure out how the aliens work instead of inventing a new one. And it seems like so many of these movies are interested in inventing a new one. Like I don't need a predator alien hybrid. Okay. Like maybe get your basics
Nobody
right
needed that.
first.
Nobody
No.
needed that. Yeah.
So this is kind of going in some of those bad directions. But what I love about it is I love, again, the character of, Ripley Yates. And I love this kind of like motherly connection to it. And the fact that she actually feels guilty, especially in the conclusion. I love the look of the alien's face, like for the first time.
I hate that. I hate the design.
Oh, I love that. So for me, it's like the thing I hate most about these franchises is when the villains are sort of like faceless, evil things that you can kill without feeling any guilt about. I mean, this is why, like, fundamentally, the zombie movie is a conservative movie, right? Because the zombie movie is centrally saying, like, those Arabs, they're not like us, and you can kill as many of them as you want, right? And Star Wars kind of has the face, the stormtroopers, right?
Yeah.
And it isn't until later that you get some investigation of them being people. The alien is the ultimate sort of like, how are you supposed to identify with this killing machine, right? And the idea that there is an alien human hybrid that is pained as Ripley betrays it just tickles me. Just like I love this like identification with the other there. I love like feeling bad for an alien. I don't know why that just, maybe it's the empath in me or,
Yeah. I just don't feel I don't feel anything. I just think it looks rubbish. It just looks like this flabby, pale sort of skull face thing that just is. It licks her face, and like you got Brad Dourif going, it knows its mother, and I'm just like, this is bad. Like everything about this is bad. Like I don't like any of it. And then even the way they kill it, which is we've talked about like Ellen Ripley's acid blood. Could have even come in handy at those elevator doors that they couldn't open because we find it burns through shit. She throws it at a window that then sort of forms a small hole that the alien is then sucked against, and it fights against it, and then is eventually pulled through, and it sort of pops and is sucked out into space. It's making this all these noises and stuff.
I love that. I love this. That
It's like, yeah, this is kind of my zenith of like, this is, I sit there and
jump the
watch it.
shark.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
this is it for me. I'm done at this. Like, I've been done with the film, but this is almost like like an exclamation mark at the end where I'm going like, oh no, I hate this film. Like, I really dislike this film. This is a stupid idea, stupidly executed, and it,
So
looks bad, sounds bad, and Brad Dourif talking shit is just irritating.
I like all of these things that you hate, and it's not that I'm in love with them, and I'm not going to defend them as smart, but again, everything that I experienced with this film is based on it being the fourth movie and my lowered expectations. And so I like, okay, I don't need another version of the alien, another alien redesign. I'd rather you just do it right. I don't even approve of the alien queen in Aliens. That's how much of a purist I am at this. But I've had it before and had it before and had it before. And so now I've got another. I love that its face is expressive. I love like the mother stuff is there in Alien 3. That's when it's first introduced with the alien peering at her and not killing her, which works, is one of the few things that I think is a really strong suit of that film. And here that's being taken to its next level. I like it. I like the sympathy for the alien. I like that, they have had this connection all along, and now she's following through and killing it, but there's an emotional price to that. You feel bad for the alien, which I mean, like that I love. I just love that so much that you feel bad for an alien. And it's so transgressive to me that you feel bad for the final boss. Like, to me, part of why that the final boss doesn't work in Aliens is it's just like, here's the queen. Now we're gonna, have the big boss fight. And it's just an unthinking monster, right? Beat the big boss. I mean, it just leaves me kind of cold. And here the final boss is someone you suddenly are told, no, it identifies with its killer and it feels bad. It feels betrayed and hurt as it's dying, and it dies, and then it dies terribly. It's not just thrown out an airlock like we've seen twice before. It is sucked out slowly, and it's horrific, and it dies slowly and painfully. And I love the shots of its guts being pulled out. And so all of this kind of works for me. I'm not saying it's smart. I'm not saying it's the best thing ever, but
I don't know. This is, everything you're saying is usually what I'm saying. This is the thing. I think
right, I know. We've
usually
completely switched sides. You're Mr. Logical, like
For some reason, this film, I'm cheering the death. I'm like, yeah, die, you ugly bastard. Like, I hate it so much. I agree. Actually, what I will say is, again, come into the special effects and some of the design work. I don't like the design. Funnily enough, I actually know for a fact that they did it. McFarlane Toys did Movie Maniacs and stuff. They did a version of this Alien, and it's one of their least successful selling toys. So
I'm not surprised, right?
I feel vindicated a little bit.
Well, it's not like there's a ton of Alien Resurrection fans going like, "That's my definitive Alien," is that weird hybrid thing at the end.
But the scene of it being sucked out through the window, is kind of cool. Like, it's a well done thing, especially the bit where its skin is pulled back to a point. It rips its stomach open, and it's like guts falls out, but then its guts are sucked back up to go out through the window. That's cool. Like, then it's sort of, and then the final one is its head being pulled in. It turns into a skull that then gets pulled out. Like, it's a well done sequence. I agree with that. But I would never want this sort of version to return. I'm not going like, oh, I want that.
I don't either.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that 100%. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's there for the mother stuff, right?
Yes.
And it's there for the empathetic killing of the final boss.
Yeah.
Right? Which, again, I think is like amazingly transgressive. Like, I don't know.
No, I see what you're saying. I think, I think it's trying to be. I think it's probably you see it as more successful than I do. But we also see that they then this is the final thing. So they kill the other 12, I don't know, 11 aliens that are left by ramming this huge spaceship into Earth. And then from a distance, we see the explosion of the
Yeah, this
spaceship
is
hitting Earth.
unclear. Yeah.
And it basically appears to be a massive nuclear explosion that kills a third of the population of the planet. So, well
Or
done.
would. Yeah, so I had a question about that too. Like my initial thought about that sequence, which is not the best FX work, especially
No.
after this cool alien death, is oh shit, they've just like they've just created like a meteorite impact on Earth. Like this has killed millions of people on the planet,
Yes.
right? Um, but then I thought, wait, is it exploding in the atmosphere? I don't know. Like a line of dialogue could have fixed that.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't really like ripple out quite the way you'd expect if it hit the planet's surface. But you're right. I had the same thought. Like, um, you have just killed a ton of humans. You've destabilized the entire,
Yeah.
Earth society, whatever the hell it is like. Yeah, this is a major flaw.
One of the Ron Perlman's character says relatively early on about when they actually say that they're destined to go back to Earth. He says, "Earth,
Mhm.
what a shithole."
Right.
And I think in that dialogue, it's supposed to be sort of like suggesting like, "Oh no, the Earth's disposable because there's no one there." You go, but then why not let the aliens run?
Right.
Like, you know, it's either good and you need to save it, or it's not, but you need to wipe out the aliens. Like it's
No,
not clear.
it's good and they need to save it, even if it's, like run out of resources
Yeah.
or whatever, right? But this conclusion of ramming the ship into Earth, like again, like a line of dialogue that just says it'll, detonate in the atmosphere, and that
And
will kill
rain
some
down
people or,
debris and fuel and stuff
and
across the planet.
there's going to be a radioactive, I mean, we had one before,
Mm,
in human history, after this prompted the H-bomb
yeah.
bans. So, that's what I hoped it was presenting, but it's unclear. And a line of dialogue would have made this much better.
So in order to save the planet, they killed a bunch of people, is how I take it.
Possibly.
And then we have this line of Winona Ryder saying, um, welcome to Earth, like, what do we do next? And Ripley saying, I don't know, this is the first time I've been here. And you're like, yeah, and you fucked it up straight away. Like, yes. I don't know if this was supposed to lead into a sequel that would have had them on Earth or doing something. I don't know. But yeah, that's it, just sort of ends in that point. I'm just like, okay, I'm done with this.
It does sort of end. I mean, but it makes me want to see superhero Ripley and, her sidekick. Like, and I love this. Like, I love this version of Ripley so much better than I love the OG
Yeah.
Ripley. Like, and I don't exactly know why.
Because it's because she's got license to be more badass.
Yeah, well, and she's more ambiguous in
Yeah.
her morality, she's not just the hard-bitten, woman who's been through one thing that she suffered through after another. Just kind of gets old for me. Especially in Alien 3, where it's like, I've done this my whole life. And I think, have you really? Like, in your mind, it's been like the last 3 months,
Yeah.
that sort of feels like a meta commentary. Yeah, so, and I love Winona Ryder. Like, I'm ready for their stories, and sadly we didn't get them. But I realize what in terms of final thoughts. Did you have?
Go, no, go for it. Final thoughts. I mean,
so I realize how we've turned into each other. The Alien franchise has broken me.
right.
It has broken me successfully, one movie after another. So by the fourth one, I'm like, who gives a fuck? Right? All I want is like, just, I just want an entertaining story. Give me some aliens killing some people. I know it's not going to make a whole lot of sense. Like, Ripley's more interesting here. I'm entertained by the actors you've chosen. For the first time, I can remember the actors you've chosen.
Mm.
Like, I'm entertained. The scenes have a panache to them that, I felt was missing in the last few. I mean, and, my standards are just, I've been intellectually broken by the franchise at this point. I've lost any ability to resist and just say, this makes a logical sense because I feel like it's episode 4 of something that's, stretched that rubber band to snapping so many times and the rubber band is just lying there broken.
Mm.
So that's my theory.
No, I think I can see that. I think there's something interesting about the fourth installment or the development of a franchise. And you mentioned about Mad Max and how that's sort of a bit of a belter. And I agree. But actually, it follows the same trajectory, just in a different in a slightly different way. Small starting film, much bigger second film that goes all out. Third film that has to do something different. And it's sort of go, just do something. The Americans are involved now, just do something, and you get Beyond Thunderdome. It takes a lot longer, but then they go, well, the fourth film is going to be the course correction. We've got to do something different, and it does. It brings us Fury
or the
Road,
radical reinvention,
the radical
the beginning
reinvention
of a new trilogy.
Exactly, yeah. And so you get Fury Road, and Fury Road is a massive success. And I think so. I do think that the fourth film is often, as you said, the reinvention, the resurrection.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I think this was a bad choice. I think it's either a success or it's not. And I think this is where it really did. It falls flat for me. There is a sort of a design aesthetic for this that I do think like a European influence, which obviously comes from the director and some of the other things that do look cool. It moves on from Geiger whilst also honoring Geiger, which is actually very successful. But from the moment this film starts, and it has those sort of the whole things about genetics. I mean, it's not like I'm a genetic purist. I watch and enjoy Jurassic Park films. Right, I like that franchise, and I'm wholly aware that the genetic sort of science behind that is absolute bunkum. So it's not like I'm going. It has to be wholly scientifically accurate. But this is so far from anything remotely sort of even logical that it kind of feels like it's insulting me as a viewer. I like some of the characters, but then it continues to do these things with these characters. I'm like, that irritates me. That bothers me. That doesn't work for me. And so by like that third point where you're saying, you care about the characters, you enjoy watching them. I'm the one who sat with my arms crossed, like at the end of the sofa, going, I don't care. They can't do anything good with these characters now to bring me back into the film. And then they hit the finale, and that finale to me is just, I don't know. It just loses me completely. And this is actually where, for a longest while, I was out. Like even as a kid, like this is 1987, so I was in my mid to late teens. I was out. Like I did this, and I was like, I watched this, and I was like, I'm done. I'd been reading some of the comics, I'd read some of the bits, and I was just like, yeah, this is enough for me now. So I sort of left the Alien franchise at this point. Weirdly didn't do the same for Predator when I know the Predator franchise is just as, if not more messy. But yeah, I sort of fell off at this point, and then it wasn't really, even with AVP and others. I was like, now I'm kind of done. Like the Xenomorph to me is a side character. You mentioned zombies; it felt the same, and I think you're right in that sense. I was like, there's no character there. They're boring in that, like it needs to have interesting people to interact with, and I haven't had anything that's brought me into the story. So I'm that's why I'm looking forward to Romulus, because I'm like, oh cool, they're going off and doing a smaller story. I'm hoping the characters and everything are interesting. They're going to take it a different route. Let's see what it does. But yeah, Resurrection to me is, I'll tell you how bad it is. Right, it's the at this point, and I don't know why, because it definitely has one. This is the only one I don't have the novelization for.
Well, that's how you know something's really bad. Is that
That's
Scott
yeah.
Weatherly doesn't own the novelization.
Yeah, yeah. I think I've got Prometheus. I've definitely got Covenant, but like, yeah. So I kind of have a bad feeling about this against this film. So that's kind of And maybe it would be interesting to read one day to be like, okay, well, how does this translate to prose? Like, how did they try and use the script as the baseline for that? That'd be interesting. But yes, at this point, to me, the franchise is dead.
I keep going back and forth on this idea of rebooting franchises while ignoring certain episodes,
Mm,
which I usually hate, right? I mean, I just hate it. It's just like acknowledge the bad stuff along with the good. I'd say there are rare exceptions to this. I mean, like Terminator is that way, right? Like everyone
Oh,
wants to go
yeah.
back to T2.
Yes.
We've had 2 movies now.
Well, Halloween did it. They were like, ignore everything apart from the first film. That was.
I mean, they did it with Godzilla
Hmm.
multiple times. I mean, so I usually hate this, right? I'm an all-in continuity guy. Alien kind of has me rethinking that, where there are certain things in Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection, especially with the mother stuff, that I feel like it expands the mythology in
Hmm.
ways that we really can't reconstruct our understanding of the alien without these 2 films, right?
Hmm.
On the other hand, there is a part of me that just thinks we should just wipe these last 2 off and and the only other franchise I feel this about is RoboCop. Where like RoboCop 3 is just not does not deserve to live. But the difference is I would say you have to include RoboCop 2. It's just such a masterpiece. And other people, like the attempts to reboot or whatever will
But another
try to
another
include
one,
one.
another one I'd be interested, that was rebooted and again. But again, that first 3 films follows that same pattern. Like, RoboCop 1,
Hmm.
classic, ups the ante with RoboCop 2 in almost every respect.
Hmm.
And I think both you and I sort of enjoy RoboCop 2. I think we'll definitely feel that. But RoboCop 3 feels like that. Oh shit, something's running out that we need to sort of a rights issue maybe bang something out. We've got to put something out there to address something, and you get RoboCop
Weird, different
3.
direction. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and then they've decided to reboot, and you get the reboot of RoboCop, which again is an odd choice in many respects. But um, yeah, I agree. A lot of these films seem to go through this sort of the third and fourth films are the oddities. Um,
Well, and I think you're right, even though I like this movie more than you do. I think you're right in your criticism, and I think that, what it really points to is that after Alien, certainly after Aliens, you needed to put together that Bible for how this works from start to finish and how this needs to logically proceed. You needed an overseer for the franchise who
yes,
was a smart, good person instead of just doing it piecemeal, one episode at a time. And that's exactly what they failed to do.
yeah, maybe it's that look at me. I'm not saying that the MCU is, doesn't work. Well, there's lots of continuity problems with that sort of thing and all kinds of things. But at least with Kevin Feige, they've sort of made an attempt to do that in a kind of way. And it's too big, it's too unwieldy to do it
It's too
successfully.
many movies now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like it's way too big. But if you were doing it film to film, yeah, then that should be the thing. I mean,
Right.
it's funny how like the biggest problem with like, the Terminator franchise is this exact thing. They gave a time and date for when um Judgment Day would happen. And then eventually they're sort of rolling towards this date and they're like, oh shit, like this date's fixed, like in continuity, like we've got to do something. But even in Terminator 2, like it said, like, it's gonna
Right.
be August, whatever, 1997. And that film even takes place later than it's obviously set because John's 10 or 11 years old. But yeah, so they're like, okay, well now in 3, oh, we didn't erase Judgment Day, we just pushed it out. Like, they start to sort of have this shifting thing. And I think you're right. This is the same thing with Alien. Like, oh, we've got this sort of kind of shifting law about how things work and who's involved when, and it's just
Well,
uh,
I mean, the other thing, not to belabor the end of this episode, but the other thing that interests me about exactly what you're saying is that there are big narrative problems built into the concept of these
mm,
franchises, right? So, the big, less so Predator, But, like Terminator, the big concept is Judgment Day is going to happen, right? Like, how do you've gotten all this narrative fuel from a pending apocalypse. You've got to deliver, right? Um, and with Alien, it's if one of these gets to Earth, right? Like, Wayland Yutani wants to study these, but we also know that if one of these gets out, it's like, biological warfare in a lab where if the virus gets out, it's going to kill all of Earth, right? I mean, this is, and you kind of have to go like mutual assured destruction or, for some other kind of metaphor there. But you have to follow through on that difficult premise, and I think the same thing's true of like the Borg and Star Trek. It's true of a lot of these, franchises where you set up some unbelievably successful movie or episodes or characters, but the fuel that makes them successful is this kind of like implicit apocalypse that's coming, right?
Yes.
The narrative damage that they can do, right? I mean, it's Magneto and the X-Men, right? I mean, the world's going to get fucked up, right? And then you either have to follow through on it or not. And there's, if you don't, you better have a super clever way of getting out of it. And kudos to Terminator for kind of following through. And I sort of feel like the chance to follow through was Alien 3. It didn't.
Yeah.
This is like the weird addition to that, the weird, one-off sequel, right? That like, yeah, I mean, you're right. It doesn't make logical sense, but you have to, in all of these franchises, have somebody running the ship with that sense of logic and with an understanding that we've got to give the audience what we've promised. We can't run away from the premise of this entire franchise.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, I would say, I think 100% right. I think one of these things is when you get something, especially one's a bit, based on a book series, and the book series is going to come to an end. I think like the Harry Potter series, for all its problems, it was like this film series is going to end with a showdown between Voldemort and Harry Potter. It's in the books. Like it was, even like Rowling was like, that's going to happen, and and both the books and the films were like, yes, seven entries, 8 technically, we split the last one, but that's how it's going to end. Done. And all right, they went and did Fantastic Beasts and stuff, but they were like, no, but this is this. That's the Harry Potter saga. Like, you got what you asked for, you did all the bits, and we're out. And I kind of respect that. And they're like, oh, we're done with that bit. We're going to go off and see something else, another part of the wizarding world. And you go, cool, do that. I feel Star Wars has got the same problem. They're like, Skywalker. And you're like, I'm fucking sick of the Skywalkers. Like, drop that, move somewhere else. And they're trying to do that. But like, yeah, you are right. Like, it's this thing of give people what they want, make it inevitable. Otherwise, the stakes become pointless.
Yeah, well, I think Star Wars movies do the same problem where, okay, so you've had the final showdown with Darth Vader. Now you're in charge. Now you have to rebuild some kind of interplanetary consortium. No, never mind that. Well, let's just go right back to the Empire, right? Because that's what fans wanted. This is exactly the same kind of failure to manage a franchise.
Yeah, it is interesting. We'll cover a couple of these other franchises, and we'll definitely get to RoboCop. I think maybe it's the first one we'll get to because I really want to talk about that.
Well, I think we both love RoboCop.
Oh yeah, maybe. Oh no, we do. But I think we will have to. I'm talking like a deep dive. Let's not mess around. We'll do RoboCop 1, 2, and 3. We'll do I think we should do the 4 TV movies. We'll do it. We'll do an episode of the TV series.
Of the 2 animated series.
And we'll do the animated series. Yes, that's it. So, maybe we'll hate RoboCop after that. Maybe it'll be like a vaccine, but we'll see. Anyway, we shall end this one here. So
next up is Romulus.
Romulus.
We get to, hopefully we get a course correction.
Yes.
And we're both either going to come in and say, thank God they finally got it right. We want this franchise. Here's the thing. If you're listening, we want this franchise to succeed. We have alternate. I have been tough on the first 3 movies. You've been tough on this one. We want this franchise to succeed. We both like the idea of Alien. We want this to succeed, and we both want Romulus to be that
Good.
course correction.
Yeah, I want it to be good. I'm looking forward to it. I think the advertising has been great. I think I'm looking forward to it. Sounds good. I like the director. You know, I'm hearing good things. It's made 110 million in its open weekend. Fingers crossed. This is what we've hoped for. We shall see. But we shall come back next week for the next episode, and we shall tell you what we think. And you'll probably know in the first 30 seconds where we stand on this thing. But for that,
And we're both going to be ecstatic, or both going to be vomiting with our heads in our hands,
Yes.
or we're going to be fighting it out.
Either way, we shall be here, and hopefully you will be too to come and listen to it. But obviously, you know, we've got more over on the Patreon. We're doing some more Star Wars Alien stuff. We've got Alien Isolation. We're going to look at the game and the sort of the animated movie that came out of that, and we're also going to actually have a look at the Alien shorts that were done as part of the 30th anniversary. That they're on YouTube. They're available, but haven't really been put anywhere else. So apparently they're very good, and we'll have a look at those. So that's on the Patreon, because right now, as I'm between these episodes, you'll notice there are some little snippets of what we've been doing for the Apocalypse things. I've been putting some little snippets of those Patreon episodes out, so you get a glimpse of what we're talking about. So if you want the whole things, go and check out the Patreon, patreon.com/20cg media. Obviously, the links are down below in the notes. A whole other things on over there as well. But for now, anyway, we shall wrap up on that. Julian, thank you very much. Been a good debate this evening. As much as it was, I think we
mostly agree.
Yeah.
You know,
from the
my brain has been broken. I'm a defeated man.
No, we were agreeing from a different angle. I think that's a good way of looking at it. Anyway,
give me Winona Ryder with a space gun, and I am in love. I think that's the bottom line.
Yes, but anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and we shall see you on the next episode.